I wish to thank both Vicki and FX Street. This is it's really extraordinary because ultimately what happens is most people trying to learn trading decide that they're going to really develop their left brain, and they're going to have that knowledge. They're going to have the know-how, and they can talk the language of trading. They can swap stories, and they can talk about the ones that got away. They can talk about how close they are. And yet what happens is when you get around to it, what you discover is people miss peak performance. They miss the kind of mind that has to be developed, the emotions that have to be developed to be able to use the know-how. So in this presentation, one, if you have questions, please type them in. The thing is, I'm going to be taking questions at the end because I end up answering a lot of the questions that people have during the course of this presentation. Afterward, we're going to take them. So from there, what I want to do is get started, and let's really take a look at the dream that exists with almost everybody who gets into trading. They have this dream that they're sold, and you go to the Traders Expos, you go to that, and you listen to all this stuff, and it just seems like all you have to do is learn how to use this system, and just the blue sky is right around the corner. All you have to do is follow the rules, use this system, and everything's there. And then it matches up, that particular way that people say things matches up with a mind that you have, that you believe with hard work and learning and knowing how to trade, you're going to experience success in trading. You bring success from other careers, you bring success from other businesses into this, and all you're going to do is get the know-how, and you're going to be able to prove everybody wrong. And you literally start the mantra. You start the affirmations, you start the visualizations. I am a successful trader. I can conquer trading. It goes on like that, and you really start counting the money, and all you know that you're just almost there. You're almost there. Then every time you do it, though, all that hard work, all that knowledge acquisition, all that belief in success, that leads to this mind that's ready to trade. But what happens? The trader still trips and falls on his face again. Why? Yesterday I was working with a trader who had his first profitable month. And then he came in and he was sitting there talking to me and says, Randy, I don't know, I've just blown this whole thing. I don't know what happened. And I said, well, let's go over and say, what did you do? And ultimately, what he had done is he had dropped all the habits that had produced a month of success. It's kind of like, oh, well, I got it now. I don't have to do anything anymore. I've got the mind that trades. And he doesn't understand it. It was so close. It was so close. They could taste victory. So close. But what happened? What happened? You know, ultimately, why does goals just keep falling short of performance? Why does that happen? My promise to you is this. Is the mind that you're bringing to the performance of trading is not the mind that's going to produce success in trading. Okay? I want you to hear that one more time. It's really important. The mind that you bring to the performance of trading is not the mind that's going to produce success in trading. And don't believe me. Believe your own experience. Believe your trading account. Okay? That's the final black and white barometer. And so you're going, Ultimately, knowledge has to be tempered by the environment it's going to be worked in. The U.S. Army is a very well-trained machine, and they train their men in combat conditions because they want them to be able to perform in combat conditions. So ultimately, what happens is you still sit there, and what happens almost always, and most of the folks here, they're going to have financial goals. They're going to have goals. It says, I'm going to make so much money in a day. I'm going to have this, and I have to keep trading until I get that. They have all sorts of things like that. And ultimately, they're making a huge mistake here. They're focusing on financial goals rather than performance goals while they're trading. This is what keeps you stuck in self-limiting beliefs and patterns, okay? And it's also what keeps you from looking about what you need to be looking for to build a mind that trades. And I'd like to actually tell a quick story here. A couple years ago, I'm watching the Olympics. And there is a hurdler, and I like hurdling because it's an enormously complex race. there's this guy, this American, who is just being touted as the next gold medal. He's going to blow everything out, and the reporters are just hoopla him up. And sure enough, when the bell goes off, he bolts out, and he hurls through those hurdles, and you can see him just that, wow. And at the end, he's won. He set a new world's record. He's panting. He's kind of getting his breath. Reporter comes up to him and says, what does it feel like? What does it feel like? What were you thinking when you were running? And you looked at this athlete with this inquisitive, what? Expression on his face and says, what do you mean? And she's saying, yes, we want to know. The world wants to know. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? Were you thinking about being a world champion? Were you thinking about breaking the world's record? And he smiled and he said, do you really want to know what I was thinking? And she said, yes, the world does. He says, well, okay, I'll tell you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the reporter just has this dazed look on her face and says, what? He says, yeah, all I'm doing is focusing on my performance. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm thinking about here, now. I have no doubt that his track coach, on that 1, 2, 3, 4 sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4 sequence, I have no doubt that he has trained that athlete's body to be in motion and to be hurdling as he's racing. I have no doubt that he has a great sports psychologist teaching him a lot about what's happening in 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But while he's in the performance of the race, he's not thinking about the gold medals. He's not thinking about the goals he set to become a world champion. He's thinking only, focused only on performance. And that's what happens here. And ultimately, when you choke in the clutch at the moment of performance, what you're doing, you're no longer in the here and now. You're no longer in the execution of the trade. You're either in the future thinking about what horrible things could happen, or in your past remembering what bad things have happened. You're not here now in the performance of that trade. It's in the here and this now. This is where the hidden beliefs, emotion, biology, and circumstance conspire to hijack the mind's capacity to perform in the clutch. This is what happens day in, day out in trading. Once you're in the heat of the moment, what really happens? Well, I can tell you. You project your submerged beliefs onto the markets, not the ones you tell yourself you have, not the ones you talk about, not the ones that you quote other trader psychologists about. No, the ones actually that are performance. Okay? Because ultimately, you trade your beliefs and you get feedback in your trading account about the effectiveness of those beliefs if you listen. And I've noticed enormous resistance to listening to the trading account about your performance beliefs. This is where the action is. This is where the whole thing is. And it's going to tell you where it's at. And my promise to you is this. What you refuse to see about yourself is going to bite you. It's going to hurt you in trading. The mind that uses know-how is what has to be developed. You've got the know-how. That's no problem. The thing is, there's plenty of golfers who are championship quality that have the know-how, but when they get into the moment, get into the clutch, get into where the pressure's on, they choke. Same thing with traders. Otherwise, basically what you do, if you don't know about this mind, the real one, the one that's actually performing, you stay stuck and you become your own worst enemy, producing self-destructive trading like my friend I was working with that had the successful month. Suddenly you discover what he did. He didn't believe he had to start doing all that stuff, all that ritual, all that stuff, all that preparational stuff. He says, I know how to do it, man. I know how to do it now. No. What happens is a self-limiting belief creeped back in, and suddenly he was no longer doing the things that made him successful. So, how do self-limiting patterns get started and then continue to persist? Okay, and this is where brain, biology, emotion, circumstance, and experience forge a mind to enhance your survival chances, not your trading success. My friend, ultimately, your body, your brain, is all about certainty, about ensuring that you survive this moment, okay? In trading, the mind is very different. The mind is about probability of success. It accepts there's a good bit of failure, and it's just part of the game. It's all about probability mind. It's not about certainty. If you're plugged into certainty, that's all left brain, and it's pretty bad training, okay? In this emotional brain, that's the part of your brain that's 50 million years old. It's the part of the brain that you share with other social mammalians. The emotional brain does not distinguish between uncertainty, ambiguity, confusion, and fear. They're fused together. And think about it. You have a brain biased to avoid fear, threat, okay? Yet, you are training yourself to operate in an environment where there is no certainty, everything is ambiguous, and everything is about probability. Do you see the problem here? All your training, all your right brain training becomes a disability for you in trading. It's a very different mind that's needed. And then you take this one thing further, and then you go, let's take a look at this brain. Once it finds a successful solution to avoid threat, notice that it's a successful short-term solution. It doesn't mean a long-term solution. The brain wires it into circuitry so that it pops up every time the brain perceives threat, uncertainty. This is called adaptation and habituation. It is unconscious. It's just happening because you have biology. And then any perceived threat then triggers the automatic response. Think about trading. Think about looking at setup. Thinking about entertaining risk. Think about having a trade just fluxing on you. Once you enter the trade, man, there you go. This emotional learning then takes precedence over thinking. There you go. That's why you can talk the talk, but you can't walk the walk. And suddenly what it does is it becomes a submerged belief out of awareness. Danger, danger, danger. And like radar, it seeks out similar threats to certainty and finds them in the uncertainty of trading. And ultimately what happens is your trading mind, particularly if it's not trained, does in fact get compromised. And you know how to trade when you're not in the heat of the moment. But you can't trade in the heat of the moment. This is the big deal, and this is the big thing that has to be done. Most traders that I have worked with, they have to lose an enormous amount of money before they come to their senses and realize that they can think all they want, that they don't have to develop the emotional brain. But after they've lost numerous accounts and have refunded numerous accounts, only then do they start realizing that the more you resist this, the more it's going to persist. The truth is, an untrained mind on testosterone, dealing with submerged beliefs, is going to blow you up. When you start denying the fear, it just simply threatens the ability to ambush clear thinking. Willpower is just blown away. I know a lot of guys who just gut it out, man up to this stuff, and then basically wilt. Then you ignore it, which is what a lot of guys do. It gives the circuitry even more power because now it's showing the amygdala, that fear-based part of the little brain, that you can't manage. So it's got to take over. It has to take over thinking and try to figure out how to avoid or attack the situation. So then you suppress it. There you go. That's what men do well. It bottles it up, and what you do is you get a stronger reaction, and it blows you up in trading. There's your revenge trading, there's your over trading, all that stuff. Pretty powerful stuff. It goes, whoa, this is pretty gritty, Randy. Yeah. The key is in trading, you are forced to take personal responsibility for the effectiveness of the beliefs that you bring and project onto the markets. Most traders are going to stay stuck in non-performing beliefs that limit their trading. They're going to do this, and you walk into any big trading expo, and what happens is people are walking around. When they're honest, you find out that nobody's making money. The guys who are good, the guys making money, are no longer going to the expos. They know how to work, and they understand that the newbies are the people who refuse to develop the mind are, in fact, going to give them money. So, therefore, you're sitting there in the heat of the moment. These submerged beliefs become the operational belief. That's what torpedoes your performance. You can talk the talk, but the thing is you can't really, you look at the trading account, and the trading account is the truth meter. It's going to tell you about the effectiveness of your beliefs that you're bringing. And this is where you go, man, I need to change the beliefs I have about my performance. And I need to look at my beliefs are about my ability to manage uncertainty. Well, after all this bad news, how do you go about changing the beliefs and the emotional responses to uncertainty so that the mind can change that manages probability? How do you do that? First and foremost, you have to recognize that you're an emotional being rather than a rational being. Descartes, I think, therefore I am, was wrong, dead wrong. In neuroscience, what we know is that all thinking is emotional state dependent. There's a Buddhist saying, it's really apropos here, and it goes, I think, but who is this I that thinks? Okay? Much more powerful question. So, thinking's overrated. It's really depending on the emotion. It's depending on the emotional brain to be able to use the know-how. So suddenly, developing emotional intelligence so that emotion and mind can work together is the ticket. That's the holy grail. Fundamentally, the left brain is not actionable under stress if the right brain is not taught to manage fear, to separate fear from uncertainty, and to develop the strength to be able to work with probability. Okay? Now, within that, here's what I call, this is what I kind of see when I look at a trader and I look inside his mind. I'm just projecting myself, okay? Struggling traders have a well-developed left brain, okay? The brain has a well-developed one. The problem is he's got Pinky as a partner, and that Pinky is not well-trained, okay? So traders are actually trading with half a brain. What you have is you have this gigantic left brain that has all this know-how, all this knowledge, and you have an emotional brain, okay, that is just so underdeveloped, that is so small and compared to the well-fed left brain. No one has built it. No one has nurtured it. And finally, you begin to realize, oh, the quality of thinking I do, the ability of using all that know-how, is completely dependent upon my emotional brain and the development of that emotional brain. Yes. Now you're beginning to really talk. Okay? And once you grasp this, once you accept this as true, and again, don't accept my word for it. I want you to look at your trading account. And I want you to start looking about, well, okay, how am I dealing with emotions? Okay, the thing is you don't have a choice about dealing with emotions. Emotions are biological. Emotions are you. You are the embodiment of emotion. The only question is, how are you going to use those emotions? Not can you get away and not have them, but how do you use them? That's how you develop the mind that can trade effectively. And you start building the skills of self-mastery, you discover I have 6 skills that I teach in my programs. The first is emotional regulation. The second is mindfulness, where you end up with a very different understanding of mind than what you currently have. Then you start discovering the submerged internal dialogue that's at the back of the problems you have. And you'll see that there is a defeatist person way back there in the brain, kind of like Pink Floyd once said in one of his songs, there's somebody in my head, it's not me. All of us have to recognize there's somebody in your head blowing you up, and you better get to know what this part of the self is. You also, the fourth skill is you have to end up freeing your heroic nature from exile. Basically what happens is you have emotional programs built into the DNA of your brain that allows you to operate at peak performance. You have to develop them and pull them into working awareness. Then, what you realize is that you have to embrace the internal struggle. There's always a struggle, friends. Always. You never get rid of the struggle. It's always there. You never retire and go to Florida and live happily ever after. Hollywood was wrong. You will always have the struggle. It really depends on what mind you're bringing to that struggle. If you have a fear-based mind, which most traders have, then the struggle is going to profit somebody else, not you. Then you become intentional as a practice. That's the most important thing in the world. And when I was telling you about the trader who had finally had the successful month and then blew it by not being intentional, That's his next job. He needs to reboot and recognize that there's a series of skills about being very, very intentional about the mind that he brings to trading. Instead of having an urgent mind, which is what happened to him, he has to develop and maintain a patient mind. The trades have to come to him rather than him chasing trades. That's the difference. So let's take a look at this. That first thing, emotional intelligence. Western society in particular, particularly with the rationalistic tradition, Descartes, all that thinking I am business, what they've done is they've put the cart before the horse. Okay? All thinking is emotional state dependent. That's what we know now. And then all of a sudden managing the mind begins with managing the biology of emotion. Remember, your body is the embodiment of emotion. And emotion's biological. It takes overthinking. Any of you who've ever been hijacked, any of you have done really dumb, stupid things when you wake up from the ether, go, what in the world was I doing? You know exactly what we're talking about now. The right brain determines how the left brain will think. That's the big piece. There has to be right brain, left brain integration. It just can't be this big, gigantic left brain. Until the right brain is properly managed, critical thinking skills are simply compromised in the heat of the moment. Okay? So now we understand we need to get the horse before the cart. Then we really need to produce emotional regulation. How many of you guys, you folks out here, have ever experienced what this visual is showing? You just really get worked up. You're tapping your pencil, your feet's going crazy, you're fixated, you're just seeing all that tension in your body, your breath is stopped. And all of a sudden what you discover in emotional regulation, emotion is biological. It has both a breathing style and a tension style that are part of that emotion. If you disrupt that breathing style, that tension style, you disrupt the ability of that emotion to hijack mind. I teach this by bellows breathing. I teach it kind of in the yoga studio. Then I take it into the context of trading where you're learning to breathe and manage your breath as you're trading and manage the tension as you trade. And it's a hard thing at first. You just go, this is hard as everything. Man, but this is really hard. Of course. You've spent decades and decades and decades basically breathing in such a way that promotes anxiety when uncertainty is challenged, or anger, okay? It's not going to go away overnight. You have highly habituated skill, emotional attunement that you're going to have to change. But that's how you do it. You end up doing that, and suddenly what you're able to do is you calm the body. Calming the body calms the brain down. Okay? When you get to the brain, what happens is that emotional regulation, as the first skill, is only going to get you to the door of the mind. At this particular moment in time, you have to develop the skill to be able to look inside the mind. So you've got this biology calmed. Now you can approach the mind. Mindfulness is the human faculty of being able to step back out of thought and recognize that you and your thoughts are not the same. Almost everybody has had the experience of stepping back out of thought. Usually it's really late. If you've ever had the experience of having a regret of the way you performed way in the past, and you find yourself lamenting and saying, I wish I knew then what I know now. You've experienced the observation of self, mindfulness, but it's way late. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're learning to wake up in the moment and see what mind you're bringing to a particular performance. That's what you're attempting to do, and that's what I teach. So now we know how to do that, and let's say you develop this ability. And by the way, mindfulness is fairly easy. The Buddhists have been teaching it for 2,500 years. Okay? It's not like it's new. John Kabat-Zinn out of Harvard has been teaching it for 25 years from a Western perspective. It's not that hard. It's not that new, but it really does require you to be introspective and start looking inside the self. Now, when you develop this skill, okay, all of a sudden, you start looking inside the mind, and And you're no longer listening to just a bunch of noise. Suddenly, there's enormous substance in there. And you go, wow, suddenly, with yourself calmed down through emotional regulation, then with mindfulness, you get to see the submerged beliefs that you have been avoiding that are hidden in plain sight. And what you're going to discover is the inner critic and the adapted voice. The inner critic, has anybody in here ever beaten themselves up after a mistake or a bad trade? Of course you have. And you're calling yourself a moron, calling yourself all sorts of names. You're just absolutely doing a lot of character assassination. That's the inner critic. And most people think, oh, that's just my thoughts. No, it's not. You do not have thoughts. Thoughts have you. Until you develop the mindfulness to wake up, it's going to continually happen that way, because you're born into a history. That history shapes you. Your brain adapts you. And what happens is you're a walking, talking embodiment of the historical conversation that you were born into. And that's why you keep doing the same things over and over again that keep limiting you and destroying what you could be. Okay? So now, all of a sudden, wow, you begin to see this historical dialogue as, wow, this is the historical adaptation I made. That's not me. That's correct. I make the statement when you're beginning to observe what you realize, you're asking, who is this mind of mine that's actually observing? And what you're going to discover is that mostly it's mindless. And your job, if you're going to become a successful trader, is to become very mindful. Because ultimately, you look inside, you find this internal dialogue, and you realize, oh, it's just two of the programs. What happens is that my mind is a lot more than those two programs. My mind, actually, is a committee. It has destructive forces in it, constructive forces in it, like the yin and the yang. It's undeniable. It's there. However, your problem has been that the observer has been asleep. The chairman of the board has been asleep. In his absence, more destructive parts have taken over rather than constructive parts. That's that historical internal dialogue that keeps blowing up your trading. However, in the same way that fear and criticism live within you as emotional programs, so does discipline. So does courage. So does self-compassion. So important, friends. Impartiality. These are the qualities that you learn how to develop and pull forward into your working awareness. And as you do this, what happens is you start noticing a new person starts emerging, one that has been buried, and you begin to awake. I use a specialized process where I'm taking the way the brain actually retrieves memory. Is that the brain, you don't have a video memory. What you have is you have a memory based on emotional state and the observer that you are at a particular moment in time. In quantum mechanics, there is a saying is that once you get past mass and energy, what you discover, everything exists as potential. And the observer that observes that potential is what brings forth the potential in whatever direction it's going to be taken. Here what we're saying is that if you learn how to go into memory and rework memory, not fabricate memory, but rechange. You can find these programs operating and you can discover how they feel. You can discover how to pull them forward. You're no longer using visualizations of wishful thinking or affirmations of like, this is what I really like, this is what I really like. The truth is you start discovering in the very performance, you see clearly that the traits are in there. And these, I'm going to tell you, these traits we just talked about, they are not adaptations. They are adaptations a long time ago that got burned into DNA. They're traits. You're just learning how to access them. And ultimately, what you get very clearly is the brain is a community of rival programs. Thoughts in the mind are representations of these programs. They're not you. You don't have to be scared about what you're going to find in there. You're going to find a mess. You're also going to find some great stuff. Your job is to have the courage to say, man, I need to reorganize this mind so that it can trade. And I would actually say have a better life too. And what you're looking for when you start looking at archetypal energies, discipline becomes ruler. Courage becomes warrior. Caregiver becomes self-soothing. Impartiality becomes sage. What you realize is that each of these are emotionally based programs that can be called forward. And the brain, when it becomes mind, uses a process called symbolic representation. Suddenly those programs take on an image. Like, for instance, Spock from Star Trek becomes sage. Jean-Luc Picard becomes ruler. These are just naming a few. Mother Teresa becomes the embodiment of compassion. Warrior becomes that part of you that literally you saw that you faced fear when you needed to. And all of a sudden, what happens is you start working and stuff. And I have a very specialized program where I go about developing these things with you. When they develop, what happens is a new committee of the mind's built. You're no longer asleep at the wheel. You're awake, and what happens is you can call forward the team members that you need for the challenges of life, the challenges of trading. Instead of choking in the clutch, these elements pull together now. And all of a sudden, you're bringing a mind rooted in discipline, courage, self-soothing, and impartiality. One that embraces uncertainty from a patient, disciplined, impartial mindset. This is the way you deal with the uncertainty in trading, with the uncertainty in life. And as you do this, as you gain at this, you begin to realize that actually fear is something that you approach, okay? Because this is where you can learn. And then you begin to realize that I can master my dragons. You're engaging in your inner struggle from a position of interior strength, okay? And with your empowered mind now in charge of the internal dialogue, rather than that historical thing, what you realize, the dragons of the submerged self-limiting belief can be mastered, okay? This is the new organization of self that you can begin to bring to trading. Then the deeper fears that sabotage your trading are no longer overwhelming. They become mastered. This is how you do it. And when it all puts together, you're like a surfer. You're like a surfer on a big wave where you realize, if you don't bring the right mind to that wave, you've got trouble. Okay? You become intentional. You develop the capacity. You see it. You're prepared for it. And just like any other skilled performer, these skills have to be practiced for maintenance. Okay? It's just like a concert pianist. If he or she misses 2 weeks of practice, their performance is off 25%. You miss 6 weeks, the game's off 50%. And it takes an enormous amount of effort to get the performance level of the brain back in line with concert quality playing. Now you're bringing an intentional trader state of mind to the management of uncertainty, not the one based on fear. And you trade for the performance of execution, not winning or losing. Winning or losing becomes a byproduct of the performance of execution that you do. If you perform and execute your trade plan very well, then your byproduct is more wins than losses and bigger wins than losses. Okay, that's the whole thing. All of a sudden you realize this isn't about having a goal of making a bunch of money. This is really the goal of 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about performance while trading. After the trading day is over with, you can go back to your goals with your future goals, but in the act of performance. And here and now, it's all about execution. With a performance mind in place, your system is actually going to deliver the edge in the clutch. Your job is to maintain the trader state of mind in the performance of the trade. So, if you were to take a look at this, what we talked about, basically what you're really saying is, here's what I found, okay? If you have been trading for less than 2 years, I encourage you to go to my website and explore all the free videos and articles. There are hours of stuff where you can read, where you can see bunches of videos and learn, get my book, start reading about this. But the truth is, you need to master the know-how first before you start engaging how to develop the right brain. You really need to have the skills. You need to be able the trading simulation and say, okay, I got simulation. The problem is when I go live and all that risk is there. You need to learn that though. If you've been trading for 2 to 5 years or more, actually a lot more for most people who work with me, and you come to realize I know how to trade, but the truth is I don't know if I'm serious about really changing myself. Or you come to the moment where you realize you have to be the change. You have to become the change that you're looking for. You can't look for it out there. You have to be that change. If you're really serious, the first thing, again, read the book. Second thing is that we have a group course coming up in October. It is a very popular course. It builds up. It's a great course. It uses a virtual classroom. You have 6 group sessions. It's a powerful 10-week course, and it's very approachable. And it's got 5 group sessions. I'm sorry. And if you're really serious and you have the assets behind you to be able to afford it, consider working individually with me. It's powerful. Either of these ways, you're welcome to ask for a free consult. It's free. You get an hour of my time, and what happens is you just go to the website and hit contact us, and Dolores will find a time that lines your availability and my availability up. And it needs to be pretty soon. We're about to go to China, so for a couple of weeks. So, that's my line. So what I want to do is I want to thank you for coming. Okay? And the one thing is I really do encourage you, if you're thinking about really developing a mind, and depending on where you are, I really encourage you to look at the group course. You don't have to. I mean, a lot of people will look at it and say, oh, I really want to look at it individually. Or you may say, well, the truth is I'm not ready for that. And we have different programs. We have different ways of approaching this thing. The key is start exploring and see what can fit you and really decide, am I willing to become the change? Am I willing to develop the right part of my brain to match up to the left brain knowledge that I currently have? That's really the key. And I really, Vicki, I thank you. I wish all of you a great fall trading season, and I am looking forward to it. And by the way, the thing about the group course, it's under $1,200. It's a 10-week course, and it's payable in monthly installments of $239. Okay, it's very approachable on a bi-weekly basis. So the thing is, it's really approachable, guys and girls. It really depends on whether or not you're ready to say, I need to do something about developing my emotional side so that it matches up with my knowledge. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. And otherwise, what happens is we'll have a great day. You'll have a great evening. And we'll go on and we'll just create our lives. So any questions? Just type them in and we'll start answering. And it could be that I've just answered all your questions. Well, it's taken, it may be, Vicki, it may be that there's no questions, and I must have just done such a superb job that I just answered all of them. Anyway, Vicki, I want to thank you. I wish all of you well, and have a great day, and I hope to see you in the future. So, take care. Thank you.